Of the agenda, do we have a motion?
Move adoption.
So moved by Alderman Doyen, seconded by Alderman Slotnick. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? There you go. Approval of the minutes from the July 12, 2016 meeting.
Move approval.
Second.
Slotnick and Moore. Okay, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes. Next, we have the consideration with possible action on request to fill the following replacement positions and all subsequent vacancies resulting from internal transfers. Do we need to one at a time
Well,
with this?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move to put 4A, B, and C together as one.
Okay, is that your motion? Do we
Yes.
have a second?
I'll second that.
Second for Slotnick, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Motion to approve,
Okay.
A through D.
All right, we have that. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Moore. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes. Next, consideration with possible action on request to provide additional information regarding the Health 1265 program.
Wait, are you going to take action on D?
We did.
We did, A, B, C, and
We
D.
did all.
Oh, I thought you said C, I'm sorry, okay, thank
He
you.
trailed.
He
Okay.
trailed off.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, they're
We're
all
good?
retirement.
Yep.
All right, so I stated the consideration with possible action and request to provide additional information regarding the Health 1265 program. So, Lynn, could you, we got A and we got B here, one at a time?
Yes,
Review-
please.
Review of bargaining strategies regarding the Health 1265 program,
Yes,
SA.
I'd like to go into closed session for that discussion.
Okay. We did that, Alderman Moore?
I'll move closed session.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye. The committee may convene in closed session pursuant to state statute 19.85 sub 1 sub E for purposes of deliberating or negotiating public employee contracts for competitive or bargaining reasons. The committee may thereafter reconvene in open session pursuant to state statute 19.85 sub 2 to report the results of the closed session and consider the balance of the agenda.
That's what we need. Joe, you don't have to wait. Okay. You're part of
Yeah,
you're part of what's going on here.
all right, okay, let's just wait till everybody. Some people say we people might still understand.
No, not work, yeah.
That's true, you're gonna have to
Keep going. You know, if somebody wants to alternate opportunities, that's me. So we'll just mention that.
Those are for a football clinic, I'm trying to get to the college, officiate. Just so I can-
How we going?
Once you're done,
All right, we're back in
5B.
5B. We're going to move on to 5B. Thanks for your patience. We discussed 5A a little bit, and we will now talk about alternate opportunities.
First of all, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to say for 5A, move forward as instructed
Okay.
for
All right.
for our staff.
That's your
Yes, second
that's your
that.
motion. Do we have a second?
Yeah.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, that passes. All right, alternate opportunities. Do we,
At the last meeting, you had asked us to look at some an alternate opportunity to the mayor's walk that was happening here on Tuesdays. So we did,
Take the door away.
we added an additional walk. The walk is happening on Thursdays, at lunch hour on Thursdays. The mayor's joined us for the last 2 or 3 of those walks, and I think some council members have also been willing to lead those walks, so we are looking for it, by the way, if you're interested. And that walk takes place, right now it's taking place out of the west side DPW garage, and we will look at moving that to the east side on Thursdays, but we have added a Thursday walk that's outside of City Hall. And we haven't really had anyone else come forward since then, but so we did add that.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to open it for interested
All right.
parties, just in case.
all right, so we have a second?
Second.
By Alderman Moore, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, the floor is now open for other interested parties if they'd like to come forward and speak on this matter. When you come forward, just state your name and address for the record.
Suggestions, is that what you're looking for?
Yes, any type of suggestions or things that you might feel are important with this program. And we, so,
And we just
is
go
anybody?
forward.
Anybody come?
Move close.
Come back to regular session.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Motion to receive and place on file 5B.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, thank you. Next, we have the consideration with possible action on review of K-9 recertification training grievance. Linda, do you want to bring something forward and then we can talk?
Well, what we have we have a grievance that now has been appealed to the level of the Personnel Committee. And in your packets, you will have written positions from both parties, from Mr. Somali representing the police union and from Mr. Falls representing the city, or the police department. So typically what we've done is ask each party to give us a brief summary, 5 to 10 minute summary overview of their position. And then the committee is welcome to ask questions, and then we'll take it from there. And then you can
No,
go
is
into
this an open or
deliberations.
closed session?
Yes, and we do have with us today Judy Lehman from City of De Pere, and she will be assisting you in closed session with
Okay.
any questions that you might have.
So for now, we can keep this open and just.
Yes, this
Okay.
is open now. We'll only be
All
during
right.
deliberations.
Okay, hello.
Hi.
Name and
John
address.
Cermelli, I represent the Police Association.
Okay, John.
I'm assuming that the four of you had a chance to review what was submitted. I'm not going to rehash it. I want to kind of go a little bit beyond that and explain what I believe to be the law and why I believe you ought to overturn the denial of the grievance. The city attorney had made a statement in the department's position paper that both parties agree that the language at issue here is clear and unambiguous. We're not in agreement with that. What I want to do is I want to tell you what the law is and how I think you should act with, regardless of whether you view this language as unambiguous or you view it as clear and unequivocal. If the language is ambiguous, there's no question that a past practice will control. The city admits that. That's on the top of page 5 of their submission paper. The language at issue is arguably ambiguous. It says, and I quote, "The K-9 units shall submit to recertification as scheduled by the department, period. A K-9 patrol officer shall adjust their work week for training purposes and be compensated for the straight time rate for all time spent in recertification training," unquote. And that's listed on page 2 of our submission. Obviously, the core issue here is the work week, the language that says adjust the work week. It is the first clause of the second sentence. I believe that that is arguably ambiguous because it's not clear as to whether that applies to only recertification training or some other training purposes, and I'll explain myself. The prior sentence, the first sentence, deals only with recertification. It says that very specifically, shall submit to recertification. The next clause of the sentence that's at issue deals with only recertification, shall be compensated at straight time. But the clause that we're talking about here, shall adjust the work week, doesn't talk about recertification. So we don't know what kind of training that is meant to refer to. Now, the parties could have specified that that clause also applied to recertification training, like they did in the prior one and the one right afterwards, but they didn't. So it's ambiguous as to whether it applies to recertification or something else. The question then is whether the past practice controls. Nobody disputes that there is a past practice here. The question is whether it's binding on the parties. All right? The past practice legal standard will control if, 1, it's unequivocal, 2, clearly acted upon by the parties, and 3, readily ascertainable. Now, in my submission paper on pages 1 to 2, I identify, I believe, 5 salient facts that are undisputed. And that is that each one of the dog handlers, the K-9 officers, were never asked to adjust their work week for recertification purposes as long as they were with that K-9 unit, until November of 2015, which is the incident that caused this grievance to occur. So we've got officers ranging from 2 years to, I believe, 6 years who have been through recertification training on a number of times and never had been asked to adjust their work week. So I believe because those facts are not disputed, the past practice is binding because it is unequivocal, clearly acted upon, and readily ascertainable. If, on the other hand, you believe that the language is clear and unambiguous, you should still overturn the denial of the grievance and sustain the grievance. Why is that? Well, past practice will still control, even in the face of clear and unambiguous language, if those same three factors occur. In other words, it's unequivocal, clearly acted upon, and readily ascertainable, plus one more thing. If the collective bargaining agreement has a maintenance of standards provision, and ours does. Now, I've given this to the city attorney, and I have 4 copies. With your permission, Mr. Chairman, I'll provide them to you.
Thank you.
I believe that it should be highlighted, and I don't have a copy because I didn't bring enough with me. It should be on the 3rd page.
You want to
Section.
second share one?
That's, okay, thank you, sir.
Go ahead.
Section 1.2, the highlighted provision, says, and I quote, "The city agrees that it may not exercise the above rights." Let me just stop right here. These rights are the management rights, the city's unfettered discretion rights, okay? So it says, "The city agrees that it may not exercise the above rights, prerogatives, powers, or authority in any manner which alters, changes, or modifies any aspect of the wages, hours, or conditions of employment of the bargaining unit, or the terms of this agreement as administered, without first collectively bargaining the same or the effects thereof." What does that mean? The important clause here is as administered. So what it means, this is a maintenance of standards provision. What it means is that how the department has administered certain provisions of this contract cannot be modified, okay? Cannot be modified. The administration is clear. What that does is that allows a past practice to exist and be binding in the face of clear and unequivocal language. Now, there's no better authority on that than the Wisconsin Supreme Court, and that is the case that says that. And it's highlighted on the very first page and then on the 11th page. I won't go into specifics on it. Please read it. It says what it says. Other than, I do want to say one thing, is that the city attorney cited that for a proposition I don't believe it stands for. But what the Supreme Court was saying in that case is that the arbitrator in that case screwed up by finding that there should be a binding past practice. Why did he screw up? Because he didn't address whether there was a maintenance of standards provision. If there was a maintenance of standards provision, the Supreme Court said then the arbitrator should have enforced the past practice as binding. Absence of a maintenance of standards provision, you don't enforce it in the face of clear language. So, regardless of what you believe the language as to recertification is, i.e. clear and unambiguous or ambiguous and cloudy, we believe we've established a binding past practice that the K-9 officers should not be required to adjust their work week. And we would request that you decide in that favor. There are a number of positions that the city has taken or the department has taken in its submission, which I disagree with. But I don't think we need to get into that now unless the committee wants to hear from you later on.
Okay.
Thank you.
That would be fine, thank you. Joe? First of all, does anybody have any questions, or should we just,
Let's hear both sides.
let's hear both. Go ahead, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you. Assistant City Attorney Joe Falls. Like Attorney Smelly said, you guys did receive the position statements. You guys are well aware of the facts and the issue of this situation. The issue here relies on the contractual language of the agreement. The city's position is that the contractual language in the provision, which is 7.3.4, is unambiguous, and that the committee should not be looking at past practices to determine whether or not it can modify that language. This is based upon Wisconsin and Seventh Circuit case law. The city and the police department pointed that out in its position statement, that whenever there is unambiguous language in a contract, you are unable to modify that language based on past practices. And the provision that we're focusing on here, the union pointed out to the broad management provision of the contract and said to look at that provision and to determine whether or not you can look at past practices. However, we should not be looking at that provision. We should only be looking at 7.3.4, which states clearly how the K-9 unit will be adjusting their workweek schedule for recertification training. You do not have to focus on the broad management provision, just focus on that provision that is unambiguous and clear on how the department will administer the recertification training. And this, the general rule that the Personnel Committee should not modify unambiguous language comes from Wisconsin case law and also the Seventh Circuit. And if I could point to, and so I guess what the City Department's position is that the unambiguous language cannot be modified by past practice. And I will address if the committee believes that the language is ambiguous, as what the union's position is. If you look at the provision, and also what the union stated was that the union stated that the second sentence of the provision, which states a K-9 patrol officer shall adjust their work week for training purposes and be compensated for a straight time rate for all time spent in recertification training, that is not ambiguous. It states right there that the work week is being adjusted for recertification training. The position of the union is that that provision is ambiguous whether it applies to training or recertification training. I think it's clear that it is not ambiguous and that it is an unambiguous provision that should not be modified by past practices. But to address whether or not you can amend it, if you do believe that is ambiguous language, the union has to meet three elements. It has to be unequivocal, has to be clearly enunciated and acted upon, and three, readily ascertainable over a reasonable period of time as a fixed and established practice accepted by both parties. If you look at the K-9 unit, when they applied the adjustment for the work week since 2010, 2012, it was not applied uniformly. The K-9 unit officers would not be paid the same amount. They'd be paid differently, either with comp time, overtime, or straight time pay based upon their schedule. So you cannot say that it was applied uniformly to make it a binding past practice. And also the supervisor at the time who was doing that, I believe it was Officer Paul Lewis, he was the only supervisor who did not abide by this provision in the contract. He was the only one that was not consistently applying it to the K-9 unit. Once this came up in 2015 and there was a new officer in the K-9 unit, they did start to apply it consistently across the board, so they would have consistent pay and a consistent adjustment of the work week schedule. So over the period of time, in order to have it to be binding, it has to be consistent, and it was not consistently applied for the past 5 to 6 years. In addition, if you look at all the other specialty units in the police department, all of them adjust their work week schedule in accordance to that provision and their own provisions. The K-9 unit was the only specialty unit that was not applying the provisions of the contract. So you cannot say that the Green Bay Police Department was consistently applying this across the board. It was not the intention of the Green Bay Police Department to have this practice of not adjusting the work week schedule for the K-9 unit. So I think because there was not a consistent application of the work week schedule for all of the specialty units, you can't say that the city had the intention to bind itself to this practice. In addition, when both sides, the union and the police department, negotiated this for the next contract, this never came up. Both parties did not want to have the contract language changed. They both agreed to this language in the new contract. This again shows the intention of both parties to want to have the K-9 units work week adjusted for recertification training. So just to close up, the contract is, the provisional language of 7.3.4 is unambiguous. The Case law states that it's unambiguous language, you cannot modify that language by past practices. And if you do believe that there is ambiguity in this provision, it was not unequivocal, it was not consistently applied by the police department, and you should not treat it as a past binding practice on the police department, and therefore you should uphold the denial of the grievance.
Thank you, Joe. Committee, do we have any specific questions?
I have two questions.
Go ahead, Joe.
I'm looking through here, I see that in the fall of 2015, notice was given in the fall of 2015 to these units, and the recertification was in December. Is everybody currently certified? Certification was done in spring?
Yes.
Was there notice again,
In this May, yeah.
like a couple months, or
You mean for 2016?
for 2016, yeah?
Yes, there was. And there was the same recertification training in May.
Okay.
Tom, do you want
No, I know. Yeah, I have a question for Mr. Surmully.
Yes, sir.
In your brief, you cite a WERC passage here where it says, where past practice has been used to modify clear language through consistent application, it reflects a clear intention by the parties to modify the language of the contract.
Yes, sir. That's the Sparta case.
Is your contention that the city's intention was to modify the language?
It's my contention that because the parties clearly did not operate for at least 6 years, for at least the prior 6 years, according to that language, the parties had agreed to operate in a different fashion. Once they do, then they are bound to that. I disagree with Joe as to whether or not it's clear or it's unequivocal. You don't look at whether the city, the PD is applying this provision in this way to SWAT team or dive team. It's just, what did they do with the dog handlers? So I do believe it is clear. I think that, I don't think it's inconsistent, because what has been totally consistent for 6 years is that no supervisor ever asked or told until November of 15 dog handlers that you will adjust your work week for training purposes, for recertification purposes. You might have had one dog handler who went to recertification on his work day and another dog handler who went on his off day, but that's irrelevant. The question is whether they were told that, or asked what to adjust their work week, and they were not. I think that answers your question.
Well, let me ask one more. So as we just had some discussion, the officers were told in the fall of 2015 that we were going to follow the language of the contract and adjust their schedules.
Yes, sir.
So isn't that a reinvigoration of the policy at that point?
The problem is that the parties can't do that during a contractual hiatus. We're out of contract at that point, okay? And you can't do that. The department realized that they wanted to exercise what they viewed as their rights under that article, but our only response is, lawful response is to file the grievance. We can't not follow the order or the directive. So for the first time in 6 years, we realized that the city, if I said county before, I'm sorry, that the city, wanted to operate in a fashion other than it had for 6 years.
And I want to ask just one follow-up question on this. In some of my previous employee relations experience, we used to do something called reinvigorating the rule. So you'd have a work rule, and it would be disregarded and not uniformly enforced, and it would come to our knowledge, so then we would announce that, effective going forward, we're going to, be enforcing this rule. Are you saying that you can't reinvigorate a rule during the contract?
No, I'm sorry. First of all, I misspoke. When this grievance was filed, we were in contract. We were not in a contractual hiatus, so I want to clarify that. I'm not saying at all that what you identify is not something that the employer can do. And then if the employees agree to that and assent to that, then the parties have agreed to go back to the language of the contract. So if we had never filed the grievance and said, yeah, well, okay, fine, you can do that, and then 3 years later say, wait a minute, you can't do that anymore, we wouldn't have a leg to stand on. But once we filed that grievance, the first time we were told that we had to readjust the work week, we're disputing your reinvigoration, and that leads us to you and/or an arbitrator.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Closed session. Is there anybody else? Otherwise, I don't know, gentlemen, would you want to go into closed session and talk with Judy about this?
I think we should.
Okay.
I
We have a
move we
motion
go
to
into
that
closed
effect?
session, yes.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We're going to go into closed session now. Sorry about that. Wait, no, go ahead.
Pursuant to 19.85 sub 1 sub 8 concerning case which was a subject of any judicial, quasi-judicial trial or hearing before the body. The committee may thereafter reconvene in open session pursuant to 19.85 sub 2 Wisconsin stats to report any actions taken during the closed session and consider other matters on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. We are- Excellent.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the committee sustain the action taken by the Personnel Director, which was to deny the grievance.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, and a second for discussion.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I have to firmly disagree. I think this is something that, and I've seen this stuff before, I really believe it would be in bad judgment for the City of Green Bay to act upon this right now. I've seen these cases before. I think past practice is a case here. I think we have an opportunity with our new Chief Smith that I have all the confidence in the world. You already see the difference in the entire police department and on how things are going. And I have all the confidence in the world that if they need some kind of change at this point, they can work it out. I have, at this point, seen the way the police department in the past has worked. There used to be grievances after grievances after grievances, and I haven't seen that in I don't know how many years now. And so I think it's a case-by-case situation. I don't believe that just because if we did support the grievance that we're going to see a lot more of this. I think they're working together as a unit more than ever. And I gotta say it again, I think with Chief Smith, we're going to see many differences, many changes. And you just saw in how we made changes in how they do their hirings and stuff. And that's all because of Chief Smith. So I think past practices do come and play here. And I think I don't want to see any tension anymore in the police department. And I'm not saying this will, but it doesn't do us any good. I think they have a point, and so I'm not going to support that motion at this point.
Repeat the motion, Lynn.
The motion was to sustain the grievance consistent with the personnel or HR director's response.
Okay, so then you have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Okay.
Should explain.
So we have
It's a 2-2 vote,
Mhm.
so in a sense that denies it, correct?
No.
That supports the
It
HR.
supports the
It
HR.
means the,
Right, the last
Last.
decision,
Decision of the
correct.
HR director is
Stands.
maintained.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Number 7.
Number 7, consideration with possible action on request to award a 3-year contract for the city's employee assistance program to ERC for $27,571 per year $82,713 total for 3 years for an annual savings of $1,960.95 per year, or $5,881.85 over the term of the contract. The contract begins January 1st, 2017 and expires December 31st, 2019. Hello, Rich.
Hello.
Come on forward.
The city is currently under contract with ERC, but that contract expires at the end of this year. We're going out for proposals. We found out that Brown County had just done an RFP for these services and made an award last year. So we checked into that. They wrote piggyback language into their RFP. They made an award to ERC, actually at a rate that is favorable to our current rate. They had 3 bidders that responded to their RFP, and they did it. They scored the 3 proposals. They made an award to ERC, and we're recommending piggybacking off of that contract for the next 3 years at a rate that's a couple $1,000s a year below our current rate. The department is very satisfied with their performance for these services and recommends that we enter into this contract for the next 3 years.
So move.
Second?
Second. All in favor?
I have a
Also
question.
a question? Tom?
Why is this advantageous, do you believe, versus putting this out for bids?
Because it was competitively bid. There were 3 bidders with Wisconsin, ties, and it went through a very thorough evaluation process. RFPs are time-consuming, and they take a lot of time commitment, not only from purchasing and departmental staff, but from people that evaluate.
So in the case of the county's RFP process, was it close, or did ERC win by a wide margin? I'm just wondering, do we have some obligation to give other people a shot?
It was close. These are the results of Brown County's evaluation. The vendors that were considered were Cigna, which is, I believe, out of Waukesha. Cigna is a worldwide national, they have an office in Waukesha. They're a health conglomerate, and EAP is a small piece of what they do. So they didn't score very many points because this is not their core business. FEI is out of Milwaukee. This is their core business. However, they scored lower on some of the criteria. Now, we didn't sit in on the evaluation, but I have a great deal of respect for the purchasing department of Brown County. They're as thorough and demanding as we are. And ERC overall scored the highest points.
Any other questions, Tom?
No, I have no more questions.
Okay.
I see the pricing with FEI at a 10, and then on ERC 8.2, and Cigna an 8.79. 10 is just because they were the lowest price wise,
Lowest
but they
price,
didn't
and-
offer the services that we're looking for?
That's right.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, correct?
Yes.
We had it seconded?
Yes,
Okay.
I have.
All in favor of that?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, that passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Number 8, consideration with possible action on request to approve the collective bargaining agreement between the City of Green Bay and Green Bay Police Supervisory Personnel for a 4-year term, January 1st, 2016 through December 31st, 2019.
Move to approve.
Second?
Okay. Is there any discussion? Other discussion on that? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? There we go. That was quick.
Nice job.
Yes, thank you much.
Nice job.
Number 9, consideration with possible action on report of routine personnel actions for regular employees.
Move to receive and place on file.
Second?
Second, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Move to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor? Okay, next meeting will be what?
Let's take 5 minutes here.
5 minutes?
Lynn, did you want this information back that?
Do you want all this?
You know, if you.
You know, I mean, we'll.
I'd rather have you have it, so.
Okay, but